that if you want for your colleagues. Welcome to this business continuity introductory session, or we also call this a webinar, right? So where we learn about what is business continuity. So it's somewhere basic and introductory session, so we understand what the whole BC is about. Now to start with, I want to make sure that we understand our ground rules and how we go with this session. So approach is that I will explaining and we'll cover some of the topic. And if you have any questions, you can type in the chat. So make sure your chat is open, it's handy. And when I ask for something, I'm expecting, of course, your response as well, and that also through the chat. In the meantime, you can mute yourself, and we will have a question answer session where if you want to talk and you can unmute, and we can have a one-on-one conversation as well with the team. So, but the whole time you can just make sure that you're mute and there's no disturbance for anyone and everyone. But yes, if you have a question, you can raise your hand, you can even ask. And if you have to unmute yourself for the question that we're going through, you can do so as well while we carry on with the session. So with this, are we ready? It's about 2-hour planned session. I think the topic that I have will cover within 1 hour, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, and then remaining is for discussion, question, answers. We may have about 5 minutes break in between as well, right? Once we complete our 1 hour, and we'll carry on with this, right? So we can energize ourselves, right? Hydrate and so forth. So are we ready, everyone? Please type in ready. Type in ready. Okay, so I see Arslan said ready, Muhammad said ready, Shahid said ready, Bella said ready, Mariam said ready. Okay, very good. So we'll carry on, and I believe that you can see my slides. There you go. So now you can see my slides, right? Okay, very good. Right, so we're talking about business continuity. And give my introduction. My name is Adnan Rafiq Ahmed. I am Business Continuity ISO 22301 lead implementer. So when you see in credentials LE, that's lead implementer. There is also a lead auditor certification, which actually in my curriculum, it's going to be the next one, inshallah. And then I'm PMP certified, project management office certified, Lean Six Sigma master black belt, ITIL, Balance Scorecard professional, and ISO 9001 lead implementer or lead auditor, right? So for BC, I'm lead implementer, and for ISO 9001, I'm lead auditor, right? And we'll talk about a couple of things on what's the difference between the two as we carry on with this. Now, the agenda is that we talk about introduction to the business continuity. We'll talk about some of your case as well, where you are, what you are doing, and what's supposed to be the right way, and some on how ISO 22301 is implemented. And do you have to go with the ISO standard, or can you go separately without having or following a standard? And then, of course, what should be of your career growth? What certification that you need to do in order to grow towards the business continuity, or maybe in ISO area as well, okay? So we'll talk about the business continuity. That's the overview and introduction. So first thing first, how many of you already worked in business continuity in some capacity? So yes, no, do you have any experience in business continuity? You can type in yes, no. While I'm waiting for your feedback, Osman said no, Arslan said no. Okay, Karen said yes, was an HR manager and assisted with committee. Okay, very good. So you're part of the committee which actually was presenting you the business continuity. All right, good. Muhammad said no, Bella said no. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Normally when we start with our session, we have like half and half kind of audience, right? Some they already have some experience, some have no experience at all. And this is basically where we are targeting, right? So that's actually to spread the awareness where we don't know what is business continuity. So let's look at the proper definition of business continuity from ISO perspective, okay? So this is what they say, and of course I'll rephrase that in our normal understanding, okay? So let's read what ISO say. Business continuity is the capability of an organization to continue the delivery of products and services within acceptable time frame as predefined capacity during a disruption. All right, so that's what basically ISO definition is of business continuity. Now, I want you to assume that you are running a business. Maybe you're the owner, you are the executive management, all right? And now, while you are running, so what do you do? Whatever your company is, whatever your organization is, you are actually delivering a service or a product to your customers. Is that true? Do we understand that? So whatever you do, whatever is the business, so if you are a hospital, you have patients, they are your customers. If you are a restaurant, you have people who come and eat, so they are your customers. If you produce, for example, let's say these ornaments, rings, bangles, whatever, you have to deliver that to shops so they can sell, they are your customers. You are a mobile manufacturing organization, so you manufacture these products and you sell it to your suppliers, all right, and they are your customers or distributors. So overall, you have either product or services that you are delivering to your customers. Do we understand that part? Right? So type in yes, no. So the link is that whatever you do, you have to actually deliver it to your customers, whether if it's services or whether if it's product. Now, here what we are talking about is that if something happens, there's a disruption, and that's a key point. So an incident happened which will disrupt your service, all right? There are incidents which may not disrupt your service. That's fine. It's okay. No problem. But here we are talking about a disruption to your service. An incident happens, something happens that actually disrupts your service. Objective. Now, what kind of incident is that? What kind of incident can disturb your service? Now, let's talk about incident. I'm using, let me use this example right now. So I'm conducting this session. And if my battery goes down, right, battery goes low, what will happen? A light will blink, all right? So that light is an incident. It's telling me that, hey, do something, otherwise I'll shut off. So that's an incident, and there's a way that we capture that, right? So there's a light blinking. It's telling me that I need to plug in the power, right? So if I don't plug in the power, what will happen? A disruption. My service will shut down. Do we understand that? Yes. So if I right away plug in the power, then will my service be down? Will my system shut down? No. So an incident happened and we took action right away. So everything is okay. No disruption. We are fine. We are good. So we capture the incident in a good way. But now in our case, when you talk about business continuity, it means that you agree with your customer that will give you some service. So I agree with you guys from 4 to 6, 2 hours, I will be available and we'll be talking about business continuity. All right, so that's 2 hours of service that we are going to give you. In these 2 hours, if my battery is down, there is no interruption, right? We shut down. You being a customer, how would you feel? Good, bad, satisfied, not satisfied? What do you think? So within these 2 hours, if the system will shut down, how would you feel? Bad, exactly, Shazib, right? So that's where we need to make sure that whatever we agree with our customers, so that's predefined capacity, all right? Predefined acceptable time frame that we have between you and us. That, okay, and by the way, if the system shut down, right, for some reason, stick around or log in again, we'll be back, all right? Within 2 minutes, we'll be back. So 2 minutes, that's a time frame that if we shut down for some reason, come back up. So that's our agreement now. Now, what happened is for your service, for your product, you agree with your customers that we produce, let's say, for example, 10,000 of these rings within a week. All right. And if something happens, we'll shut down, whatever happens, we will actually bring you these 10,000 in a week. Now, that makes sense. We understand who are the customers, what's the product, what is our agreement, and so forth. So our job, and by the way, I'm Goldsmith. So we are from Goldsmith family. And we used to have a gold factory, right, where we used to make the rings and ornaments. So I'll carry on with the same example for now. So we agreed that we provide 10,000 of these rings to our whoever is our client, right? We distribute to them. So now, what kind of disruption can happen that will stop the production? Remember, what I said is an interruption, incident, but that incident will not be an interruption. It's not a disruption. So that's fine. It's okay. And also we take an action, right? So things are okay, things are fine. But what kind of disruptions can happen? So tell me, I want from you guys, write down 2, 3, 4, how many of the kind of disruptions you can think that can shut down your business, that can shut down the production. that can shut down the service from any industry, from your industry. So let's type in, guys. Let's type in. What kind of disruption can you face which will shut down your business? Let's type in. Karen said pandemic, natural disaster, communications, fire. Very good. Very good. Pandemic is the most recent one, because of which actually business continuity has taken a boost. A lot of organizations, they started working towards business continuity, BCMS, business continuity management system. So they are trying to apply that in the organization so that anything happens and there will be the minimum disruption, which is the purpose of the BC, business continuity. So yes, pandemic, natural disaster, communications. So for example, telecom is down, no connections at all, right? Fire, okay, very common one. Unexpected error, yes, that's right. Cyber attack, which is very common these days. Okay, so anything that can stop your service. So when I talk about anything that happened to our factory, that means we have to have the raw material in order to produce our product. So what if we don't get the raw material? So that is also one of our disruption. Raw material supply shut down, right? And there's so many of them. So let's look at, let's understand. So what happened is any disruption that happened, what is our objective? And let's talk about any of the case. It could be any natural disaster, right? Fire is a very common one. Normally we actually practice the cases on fire because fire covers so many other elements. When we prepare the business continuity, and also I'll give an explanation a bit later, the idea is that you have to exercise the resolutions that you come up with or workaround that you come up with. And one of the case that we study is fire, because when there is a fire and after the fire, the effect of the fire is that some of your equipment shut down, some of the cables are burned. So the effect is to many, maybe some of the effect is to your manpower as well if they get injured, all right? So what happened is in one case you cover so many other sub cases or some of the what do you call this scenarios, all right? So you understand that if anything happens, scenario A happened, what's your response? What will you do to do what? The understanding of the business continuity is what will you do to make sure that your services are back up, your services are uninterrupted, or your services are interrupted to a level that will not be catastrophic for you. So let's come back to the example. What I said, we need to produce 10,000 of these rings in a week. Something happened. And by the way, because of pandemic recently, a lot of material was stopped, right? On the port, ships are not coming and so many other things, right? So what happened is that we didn't get our material. Now, what is our objective as a gold factory is to come up with ways that if any situation will happen, then what I need to do to come back up so that my service and my product will be uninterrupted. Because if I don't give 10,000 of these rings to my customer, I will lose the customer. My business will shut down. That's a catastrophic impact. Okay. Like in some case where you work, there is a furnace, and if the furnace is down by 4 hours, the metal will freeze. And that is a huge impact. We're talking about more than $20 million, right? So that's a huge impact just within 4 hours if the plant is shut down. So that's what we are talking about, millions and billions of impact, right? So what we have to do, we have to identify that what we need to do. First of all, what kind of interruption will do that? So we need to go and eliminate those sources. Make sure that we cover those sources, come up with a workaround, come up with a resolution so that that won't happen. And if that happens, what are the actions we need to take so that we can back up before 4 hours? Because after 4 hours, it's disaster. So before 4 hours, what we can do to come back up. That's basically what we are talking about here. That's a business continuity. That's an overall understanding of what you need to do to continue with the business while a disruption happens or after disruption happens. So you need to identify what are the critical processes in your business, and those processes, how many time you can afford to lose. So the process is down, it's okay. 1 hour, 2 hours, 1 day, 2 days, 10 days. But if you don't come back up in that amount of time, the impact is going to be huge. So you need to actually come back up within that much time. So overall, we'll see later on how the business continuity is actually aligned with the risk management as well. We'll see a comment here. What Muhammad said is, in our field, it is called risk assessment and precautions to control this hazard and risk. Very much right. But what happened is that, now the risk assessment or risk management is associated or aligned with the business continuity. They have to work together, right? And we'll talk about that later on. But here what we're talking about is because normally the risk is without a specific recovery time objective, without a specific terminology that we use in the business continuity. So risk is as simple as in your project or operations or the process, what risks do we face? And that risk has what kind of impact and so forth, right? And then you come up with a workaround or resolution for the risk. But here, when you talk about the business continuity, we are looking at from the disruption perspective. What kind of disruption can happen? And of course, then later on, you go and align that with the risk assessment, okay? And when you talk about from predefined capacity, what do you need? So in my case, let me carry on with this. Our material will stop. So already what we did is we have actually an X amount of grams of gold that is already part of our backup for 3 days or 4 days or 5 days. So we know that if our material will stop for 5 days, we can survive. But more than 5 days, we cannot survive. So that's the point, that in 5 days, we are okay. And what we need to do is we need to start working on, take an action of what we have defined in our business continuity plan, that if our supply will stop, we need to start working on it. So does that make sense? So in 5 days, material is not there. That's fine. We can survive. Our production is okay. The guys are working. And it doesn't bring any effect to us, to our production. We are still working towards our 10,000 drinks target. But what happened is, if we are unable to work, or if we are unable to get the material after 5 days, that's where we have to stop our production. And that will impact our production. Now, imagine that. 2 days of production loss, still fine. We can still cover up in 10 days, in a week. In 5 days, we can still make 10,000 of these pieces. We are okay. 2 days of service down is fine. But more than 2 days down, and we've already eaten up our inventory, now this is where the problem is. Now we cannot. So that means in a week, we have enough raw material, because remember, a week, 10,000. So in 1 week, that's fine. We can complete our target of 10,000, but the next week, we will not be able to complete our target. So that's where we have to take an action. We have to make sure that we are back up. Otherwise, the impact will be on our service. Impact will be on our product. Impact will be on our revenue. So that is basically what you are looking at. So, and for this, you need to do a BIA, business impact analysis, okay? Where you identify your processes and look at what actually brings in the impact and how much time and so forth, right? The terminology is called RTO. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. So for now, let's look at some of our impact analysis. So do you understand how the business continuity works? Do you understand the overall scenario, overall understanding? Please give me yes, no. Karen said yes. Okay, Maram said yes, Muhammad said yes, Arslan said yes, Hazeb said yes. Okay, very good. So that's the business continuity, all right, as a whole. And then here we talk about what can happen, all right? So we have multiple scenarios. So you have logical outages, we have component outages, we have site outages. So take a look at these and tell me, have you ever experienced any of those in your organization? All right, so go through with a logical outage, your component outage, your site outage. Have you experienced any one of those in your organization? So type in whatever you have faced in your organization. You can type in the numbers, like, for example, you faced only disk failures, so just type in 1. If you face 3 or 4 of them, type in 3. Exactly, Karen, yes. So from all 3, yes, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. So how many you faced? So normally what happened is that, yes, not everyone has faced these, or maybe you have faced in your organization, but you don't know it because there is a business continuity team or the risk recovery or risk management team or disaster recovery team, they're the one who are taking care of this. So that could happen. But it's hard to believe that in all of us, in any organization, and if you've been working there for like more than 6 months, that any of these disruptions never happened. Okay. It could have happened, but it is taken care of in a very good way. So maybe that's what the case. In fact, actually, just recently, one of our colleagues' system failed. Right. In fact, my subordinator's laptop, the hard drive, is actually giving tough time. So 2 days cannot do anything. Right. System down, shut down. So, but that actually had minimum impact because it was not shut down. It was actually proactively taken to the maintenance to fix it, right? So 2 days of no work, that was actually part of the process. But overall, the understanding is that you don't lose the data, right, and so forth. So that is where if you lose the data, that's maybe a bigger impact, especially if your process is very critical. So we need to understand the business continuity from a perspective that what kind of disruption can happen and what kind of impact that will lead to. And based on that impact, you need to understand your RTO, the recovery time objective. We'll talk about that in a few minutes as well. So these are some of your components that we understand what can happen. Now, here the point is that what about you? How much are you ready about it? How much do you understand of that? Because many organizations believe that these incidents will not happen to them or insurance will take care. Okay, so does the death of owner fall into a continuity plan? It could, yes. All right, depending on the organization as well. So what you write down is that fatality is one of the high level, one of the incident or disruption to the business, right? So that's where organizations, they come up with the successors plan, right? Or we call it succession plan. So that's one of the response to that risk. All right, that's a response towards the business continuity impact that we have. Okay. So yes, that is actually part of the that falls into business continuity plan. Okay, so here we talk about, have you ever lost data? Gartner estimates that 40% of the business that lose all their data. I just want to make sure that we are okay. So go out of business in with business within 5 years. So that's how important is the data itself. Then we talk about how much would 1 day of downtime cost you? Only 26% of all organizations have calculated the cost of downtime. And that's where a lot of organizations don't even know, and they don't work towards the business continuity thinking that it's okay, it's taken care of. It will not happen to us. Or no, we have our team, they will take care. So normally you need to count the cost, all right, and what could happen and so forth. So it's important to understand how things work out. So we're talking about here that what about your organization? Have you calculated the downtime for 1 day? If you're down for 1 day, do you test your disaster recovery plans yearly? Again, a lot of organizations don't even do that, right? First of all, they don't have the disaster recovery plans, and then they don't actually test it. So you have to make sure that you test them well to understand, and then carry on from there. When we talk about disaster recovery, again, it's any disaster that happens, and majorly it's from the IT perspective. Cyber attack is very common these days, so you have to have proper disaster recovery from that. And your disaster recovery plans fall under the business continuity umbrella, right? We'll talk about what kind of plans you should have under the business continuity later on. So our understanding is that how long will your customers stay loyal to you if you cannot deliver your product and services, whatever they need? This is, as I said, that we have our supplier, they need these 10,000 rings, but if you fail to provide them in a week, they will go to somewhere else. They will get it from someone else because they cannot tell their customers that we don't have it. All right. They will not take it from us, but they will take it from someone else. So it's our job to make sure that we provide them what they need at whatever the agreed time we have, right? The minimum time. So when you talk about the COVID-19, right, pandemic effects, so how does that impact your organization? Did that have an impact on your organization? Yes, no. What was the impact? Poor impact, low sales, less production? So what we face is actually during this about 2 years, what happened is that a couple of times people have to work remotely. Thank you, Karen. Yes, remote working setup. And also one of the other impact is that some people, they have to go for isolation, right? Even actually we have we know a fertility, all right? So actually there are more than couple, all right? So that actually is a loss to the organization. That's a huge impact to the organization. So as just like you mentioned, we talk about the owner's fertility, right? But then here we're talking about the team members. That's also part of the business continuity plan. So the COVID-19 or pandemic is actually one of the business continuity element. And actually that's a trigger for many organizations to start working towards business continuity. All right, so we are good to understand that how prepared are we? So as of now, if you go back and look at your organization, where are you? And by the way, it's a very good chance and a good strategy for you to go and learn from the other teams. So imagine that you have team, they're working on business continuity. Just tell them, I want to attend some session with you guys, do an awareness session, or I want to see what we are doing, or I want to learn about the business continuity. So I highly recommend all of you to go and learn from your team who are working on disaster recovery or business continuity plans, all right, and so forth. It's a very good idea to learn about those. Never too late. So here, when you talk about how prepared are the organizations, insurance is actually the keyword, right? So a lot of people think that insurance will take care of everything, but do they? Now, insurance is one of the key solutions, right? But is it the best solution? Is it the only solution? It should not be, right? So while they provide you the financial aspects of the loss or an incident, insurance does not provide a method to prevent an incident or recover. So you transfer the risk, but it's still there, right? But what you need to do is you need to actually work out on to minimize any disruption that could happen. And then if it happened, what are your action items? What's your workaround? What is your solution resolution? So that's basically what we are looking at. Talking about this, what's your when you say that first line of action, right? What do you do when any kind of disaster happens, any kind of disruption happens to your organization? It could be evaluation. We talked about fire earlier, right? So when there's a fire alarm goes off, what do you do? Evacuate, right? That's basically, I mean, as an employee, that's what you're supposed to do, right? But when it comes to fire detection and fire prevention, what are the action items there? So what's the plan that we have? What we're supposed to do? Okay, yes, you need to train people on what are the actions you need to take. So there are people who are supposed to just what they need to do is just evacuate. But then there are some who are part of this process, and you teach them in the drill that what are their actions, what they're supposed to do, right? They're part of the process who are taking an action. So we need to learn about that as well, that what are our workarounds, what are our resolutions. And of course, that's based on the time. The first time you hear the alarm, within 15 minutes, within half an hour, and so forth. Okay. So here we have some numbers. 38% of organizations in EMEA do not know how long it would take to recover from a fire disaster. Okay. Average recovery time of organizations that do know is 3.23 days. Only 3% said they would carry on with business as usual if a disaster happened. So that means they have very good recovery mechanism, right? Or business continuity mechanism. Top 5 consequences of disaster, we talk about those. Decreased employee productivity, data loss, reduction in profits, damage to customer relationship, reduction in revenue, 27%. So if you look at these percentage, these are quite high. These are the top 5 consequences of disaster. So when disaster happens, that is what's going to happen to you. So if you are the business owner, can you survive these? And if an employee, think about, you have to have the sympathy and thinking from owner's perspective. So if you are not the owner, but just an employee, But think about if that happens to the owner of the company, will they continue with the business? Are they going to shut down? Sometimes they shut down, and what happened to you? You have to go look for a different job. So it will impact you directly. In some cases, actually, they go for cost cutting. And one of the cost cutting action, which is, of course, I don't believe that's the best one, is actually to minimize the workforce, which again means it may impact you directly. So either ways, what our job is to make sure that we work towards the business continuity with the teams in operations or technical side. Okay, so that's just an impact we're talking about here. So the key concept of the business continuity management, and I think this should be the great value to you. Are you ready? Are we listening? Tell me, type in the chat. Are we listening? Yes, no, are we ready? Shazib said yes. Yaqub said yes. Usman said yes. Maram said yes. Karen said I'm ready. Okay, very good. So what happened is, let's talk about, this is where you are working. All right, that's your level of service. I'm talking about 10,000 rings we're producing every week. All right, so that's our service. And here is a disruptive event. Boom, something happens, right? In my case, as I said, that maybe we don't get the raw material anymore, right? So the raw material supply shut down. It could be anything, all right? It could be fire. It could be, as we say, because of pandemic outburst in the organization, you may have your 50% of the manpower to work from home, or and especially if you are talking about the technical people, it's very difficult not to have technical team on board, or especially if you have the plant and there's no maintenance team, that's disaster as well. So we're talking about multiple case, right? So any kind of disruption happens, process shutdown. We're talking about complete shutdown, right? So that's what happened. When you have a complete shutdown to the process, all right? So this is the time frame when you're shut down, and you need to agree and you need to evaluate your organization to understand what is the RTO, all right? RTO basically means recovery time objective, okay? So we'll talk about here. That's a recovery time objective. That means that your process is down, and in how much time you want to have your process back up before the impact becomes huge. That's basically what we're talking about. So as I said, I can afford my process to be down for 2 days. If no production in 2 days, that's fine. But after 2 days, I cannot have my production down. That's when I will not be able to fulfill my customer demand. And if I don't do that, my customer goes somewhere else. And we're talking about, let's say, $5 million business a year with them. So that means $5 million business will go somewhere else. Do you understand? That's huge, right? So RTO, recovery time objective. In how much time do I need to be back up? That's basically what it means. In my case, I have to be back up in 2 days, right? In order to produce my rings. The other process I mentioned earlier, that's where we have to be up in 4 hours, because if the furnace shut down, the metal will freeze. And if the metal freeze, there's a huge effort. First of all, everything else will shut down because they're process which are linked to each other, right? There's a value chain. Value chain, right? When in a chain, you have these pieces connect to each other. If any one of the piece breaks down, the whole chain breaks down. So there's a value chain of process. So if any one of them is down, the whole thing is down. So in 4 hours, if we don't do something and take an action to be back up, if the furnace is down, the whole organization, the whole plant will shut down. That means all the equipment, which actually cost millions, we have to actually go back and do some repair, right? So there's a damage repair that have to happen. And then, of course, we have to charge them and then come back up, which take days, all right? Minimum, I think, is about 6 or 8 days that you have to charge and you have to prepare. And then, so we lose 8 days of production, plus the material, plus whatever the other elements are. So we're talking about millions of loss, okay? As I mentioned earlier, the impact of this is calculated to be more than $20 million. That's huge. Okay, so you can think of this any production factory, right? Any plant which is producing somewhere around, like, let's say $10 to $20 million worth of items or product on daily basis or weekly basis. So you can think of those. That's the impact we are talking about. Again, it could be more or less depending on the organization to organization. Think about, we had an event, right? That happened in Pakistan about a few months ago, where there was some issue between two groups, all right? So doctors and lawyers. And then the lawyers, they just barged in a hospital and they broke items here and there, right? Equipment shut down and so many things, right? It was disastrous. About what, 2 hours, and they're just breaking stuff there. In fact, we had fertility, right? Some patients died. So yes, that's bad, way too bad. But that's what we're talking about. So the hospital operations shut down for 2 hours, and then the impact actually is more, right? So the disruption happened, and now what? Now it took about this. So that's what was the disruption event there? Like a terrorist attack? Okay. Yes, that's it was. So normally with these kind of things, that can lead your complete shutdown of the service. So the point is, for how many hours can you stay shut? You need to understand that. Break your big organization into pieces, all right? Understand the processes. You may identify 20, 30, 50 process. And then out of those 50 process, how many of them are critical? Because some process you can afford to be down. If it's not up for like even 30 days, no problem. But then some processes you have to be up within, as I said, in minimum amount of time, because their impact could be huge. So out of those 50 processes, you identify maybe 20, 10, and you identify the RTO for each of those critical processes. And based on that RTO, you also have to understand what is the minimum service that you need to produce, right? So how much you need to produce. For example, when our plant was down, our factory is down, and we are not producing any of these rings, but after, and we start getting the raw material, we require, let's say, 2,000 grams of raw material, right, on daily basis. But let's say we start getting 500 grams. That could be the minimum that we can get to at least have our service back up and start doing the production, and minimizing the impact that we are getting from our customer. So what you need to do is you need to identify, number one, what is the RTO, recovery time objective, the minimum time you have to back up, and then the minimum level of service you need to produce. All right. So we cannot produce, we cannot get the 2,000 grams of raw material, but we get at least 500 grams. That's minimum we want to produce the minimum level of service, which will not have an impact with the customer. And that will carry on for 2 days or 3 days. And then we have to be back up at the normal level. All right. So this is going to be normal level. So what happened is that we have another terminology called MBPO, MBCO, minimum business continuity objective. So how much is the minimum service do I need to produce? As I said, let's say minimum 200 rings a day. That's what we need to produce when we come back up for at least 2 days or 3 days. And then we need to get back to normal, or maybe higher than the normal. So we go above our normal rate of production. So we cover the backlog and then we come back up. All right. So this time is called MAO, maximum allowable time. For how much time your service can be down or can produce before they come to normal. So first the service was down, completely shut down, zero production. Then we start producing, but at 10%, 20% capacity. Okay. And then you need to come back to normal within, let's say, another 2 days or 3 days. So that's basically called MOA. Okay. Maximum allowable outage. All right, everyone. Any questions from that perspective? Any question on these? Is this clear? And these are the terminology that anywhere you go, in any organization you go, if they're implementing business continuity, they will be talking about these three terminologies. RTO being the very important one. All right, everyone, please confirm. Are we good? Do we understand? Yes. Karen said clear. The example is during pandemic, face mask was vanished in markets as demand was high and material was not easily coming from outside. After some week, it was available. Normally, we can relate this to that RTO. Well, you can think of this. So again, based on if you are the production company, you need to understand that, yes, right? So what was the RTO is based on when the raw material was not available. So exactly, you can relate to the same example. Okay, no issues. If we will try to provide the recording as well, so you can go through this again, inshallah, right? Any other questions on this? So carry on. Okay, so good. Then we talk about business continuity phases. All right. So I want to cover a couple of things, and then we'll take a 5 minutes break. Okay. So we talk about you have normal business, so everything is okay, everything is fine, and that's when you have an incident, right? So now that incident will bring in what? How much impact is that incident having? So you have multiple areas that you need to understand and look to. Now in your organization, you may have multiple teams working on that. So you may have this incident could be an it may lead to emergency response. So you have emergency response team. It depends on in how much time you need to take to respond. So the shortest time that you require to respond, that is your emergency. All right. So a risk may lead to emergency, or it may lead to crisis. Okay. Or you may actually lead to business continuity teams or disaster recovery teams. Okay, so it depends on what kind of incident you have, and then you lead it to the proper team that you have. So in your organization, you need to segregate or you need to divide, make sure that what incident, and based on the impact, this is your risk emergency, or this is your crisis, or this is your disaster recovery, and so forth, right? So based on that one, you need to take an action. Again, it depends on in how much time you have to take an action. So if you have a little bit more time available, you have different team to respond. If you have to respond right away, you have different team to respond. So it's based on your time frame. So you have different plans in place. So based on this one, you talk about a flow. So we have different kind of detections. So you have IT operational incidents, cyber attacks, your facility incidents, you have your pandemic incidents, business relationship incidents, maybe some other things as well. So based on what kind of incident you have, you detect. That's the first thing. Do you have good processes in place to detect your incidents? You should, right? If you don't have it, now this is where the gap analysis, you have to go back and look at how good are we towards disaster recovery or business recovery or business continuity. All right, so then based on these detection, you have different teams, different response based on the assessment. So you have information technology impact, information security impact. Yes, they're not the same. We talk about facility management or corporate security. We talk about human resource. We talk about media communication, something else as well towards business continuity. And based on those responses, you also lead to crisis invocations, right? What kind of recommendation you do, what kind of teams are going to be part of this. So the first thing you ask is this a major incident? If no, then you may lead towards the monitoring of the incident and just a normal response that you're supposed to take. Okay. But if it's a major incident, then is this a business continuity concern? So normally it goes to the business continuity officer. You may have a dedicated resource in your organization. Now, if it's a business continuity concern, the officer will decide based on the predefined criteria, is this going to be, it is going to be crisis or no? Yes, we can share the slides as well. Thank you for asking, Karen. So we'll send the slides and the link of the video, right? This is going to be what? Crisis, yes, no. And then based on the crisis, you actually lead towards another thing, which is the crisis management plan. So the crisis management will actually forward that to the three different elements, right? First of all, do you need just support? Because sometimes things may be lead to the third party guys, right? So the crisis happened and then third party should take an action. Your organization or your team supposed to only support. It could be about the supplier. It could be about the raw material. It could be anything, maybe some issues with the government as well. For example, the impact is to the construction of bridge, right? So your job is just support, but majorly the item will be taken, the crisis will be taken care by the whoever is working on the building the bridge. Now, if it's in your team, you may now lead to emergency response. You should have emergency response team. You should have a disaster recovery team, or you should have business continuity team. And you'll have these plans available. So these plans will tell you if this scenario will happen, what we need to do. For example, as you said earlier, fire. So if fire will happen, then what are we going to do? And then again, fire you have to divide into multiple levels. So there's a class 1, class 2. So you have to do classification of the fire. So if the impact is no impact to any manpower, any human, or no impact to machinery or equipment. That's maybe the class 1. Then you have class 2 if there is an impact, minor impact to your production and no shutdown of the process. And if there's a shutdown to the process, you can have class 3, and an impact to people or damage to equipment is class 4. Again, you can come up with your own classification, but there are standards available, right? So you can go through the standards, whether if it's a fire, whether if it's earthquake, whether if it's flood. So whatever the case we're talking about, this is how you need to come up with. Now, based on those items, you carry on, and emergency response team will take an action. Now, if it's a cyber attack, maybe IT disaster recovery will take care, all right? And of course, if it's not an emergency item, then of course, business continuity team will take care. You have the BC plans as well. So moving on with this, we talked about, you remember the Deming cycle? Deming cycle is what? Plan, do, check, act, right? So we plan the items, we plan the whatever we want to do, then we do it, we implement it, then we check, as in see if it's done, if it's what we are going to do or what we have done is already implemented, and then act, whatever is our corrective action based on whatever the failure, the weakness we find out. So basically, when you talk about any organization, the aim is to establish effective and comprehensive business continuity management system or the program, so that the service will continue towards its critical services, toward the critical processes. So you can protect the value for whatever you are going to provide to your customers. So you provide the value to a customer by not having the service down, giving them the service product they're looking for, and also making sure that nothing happens to your organization as well. All right. So overall, the best way to implement business continuity is to divide that on Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act. All right. So planning is what? What are the plans? What are the governance model? How are we manage it? How are we going to continue with this? So that's your plan. Do part will be, let's implement. So you start working on identifying the processes, what are the critical ones, do your business impact analysis and so forth. Come up with the business continuity strategy options, what we need to do, prepare your business continuity plans and so forth. So which is also the plan part, which is again do. So prepare all the plans. Also make sure that we are, our plans are comprehensive, they are complete. And then get into your check part, maintain. So make sure that you do the practice. Exercising is another important element. Whatever the response you come up with, you need to do the drills. Sometimes you have to do simulations. Sometimes you have to do the table talk, right? And so forth. So you do your check, and then act is going to continue. So for your organization, you just have to continue working on to make sure that whatever the business continuity you implement, it's going to carry on for long term. So this is basically the understanding of the plan, do, check, act, okay? Which is in more detailed way, this is how we implement, right? So you have the ISO 22301, which is the business continuity standard. And what you do is you divide the whole items or elements into PDCA, plan, do, check, act. So you have to plan these items. Those are deliverables for you in the organization. And then, of course, you go and do the exercises. You do, someone asked about the risk assessment. So here is the risk assessment part of your do part. That's where I said that they're aligned together, right? Now, some organizations, they have the enterprise risk management as one standalone element and the business continuity another one. The problem is if they will overlap somewhere. So there should be a good governance, a good way to connect to them each other, right? So there should be a good alignment for them. If they don't align, something is wrong, okay? You're doing a lot of effort individually where you're not connected to each other. Now, it could be that you have a different, like let's say technical risk, all right? But if you have business risk, it has to be aligned with the business continuity as well. All right, so that's basically where we talk about do some plan documents, all right? Plan things that you prepare, what kind of resource you need, competencies, do the documentation, awareness sessions for the organization. Then you go and do the business impact analysis. So the backbone of the business continuity is the business impact analysis. You identify the processes, and then on that specific process, what is going to impact and how is going to impact and how many hours we have to be back up. So the RTO is basically what you identify in the business impact analysis. Your secondary resource, secondary suppliers, what happened to technology? If the technology shuts down, what you will do? So many of those items are covered in your BIA. And then of course, in your BC strategy. And based on that one, you actually have to prepare your BC plans, your disaster recovery plans, and so forth. If you don't do the BIA, you cannot do the BC strategy. You cannot really do the risk assessment in that perspective because it should be based on each process. Who gives you the data? So question to you guys. When we do the business impact analysis, let's say you want to do it and I'm here with you to implement the business continuity in your organization. So who is going to do the business impact analysis? Well, I do it or you do it? Who will tell me that in how many hours this process, whatever the process is, this process has to be up? Come on, guys. Who will tell me this information that this X process has to be up in 2 hours or 4 hours or 2 days or 10 days? Do I do it myself? So I will tell you or you will tell me? Karen says owner, managers. Okay. Bella says the business. The business means people who are working on these processes, right? Shazib said project managers. Atif said it depends on team you have. Bella said, okay, yes. So exactly. So that's what we're talking about. The answer is the process owners. You have the process owners who are expert and they're working on that process itself. So normally the process owners are the one who tell you that this process will, we can afford to be down for like 4 hours, and that will be validated by their managers. All right. And we also call them champions as well. So you have to have champions in the business continuity who confirm everything, who confirm the data that you collect from the team. So when you talk about the business continuity implementation, it will be done by the team, right? The resources of the organization, because they are the subject matter expert. They know the process, all right? They are the owner of the business. All right, so Mohammed said competent person or designated person assigned for business crisis manager. So not only just business crisis, now these process owners, they may not be part of the BC team or the risk assessment team or so forth. They're just a subject matter expert. They're the one who do the work. Their managers are the one who are part of the teams. But that's fine, all right? They could be the one who are part of team. But we understand this, right? So I will take, let's stop it here for a few minutes. And let's take our quick 5 minutes break. What do you think, everyone? Let's take 5 minutes break and we'll be back in 5 minutes. We'll start with your question answers and I'll carry on with my presentation. So before we leave, everyone, please tell me, how are we doing so far? Type in value. Okay, let's make 10 minutes break. Okay, I agree. Let's make 10 minutes break. Okay, 10 minutes. But before you leave, tell me how it's going. Are we getting value? Okay, good words. Yes, perfect. Going fantastic. Such great info. Thank you. Thank you, Muhammad. Thank you, Karen. All right, so guys, 10 minutes. I'll see you guys in 10 minutes, all right? Thank you. Please start with question answers. So please ask your question. Any questions? You can type in. You can also unmute yourself and ask question if you want. But normally there is a white belt. We do these kind of certificate as well. So we give white belt certificate. So those are available. And the other thing is, I think I may not be able to go with my video. Okay, so yes, sorry for that technical glitch there. So the question is, what are the benefits of VCM if we implement in our organization? What are the benefits? Okay, so just a recap on benefits of the business continuity. As you talked about earlier, so first thing first is the business continuity is about what? Let me ask the team. Talk about the business continuity. So it's about what? To make sure that your business will, when the interruption will happen, it will be back up with agreed time frame so that it may not have impact to your organization or catastrophic impact to your organization. For example, something happened and we talk about any kind of interruption, your business shuts down, you're back up within 3 days, 5 days, which is agreed limit based on the service you provide to your customer, right? So that means, like for example, if you talk about your bank accounts, for some reason, if all the banking service shuts down and you cannot get your money out, how many days can you survive without getting your, without no bank access to your account? 2 days, 3 days, maybe 5 days. But after that, you start getting impatient. And most likely what will happen, you may switch your, the first thing you do is you're going to switch your bank right away. So that's where we're talking about in how much time you can be down, your business can shut down without having an impact to the customer, right? So that's basically the business continuity concept. So if you want to implement the business continuity in your organization, it's majorly looking at the impact perspective. And by the way, where this impact, what the impact is about? What do you think? What kind of impact are we talking about? Right, everyone. So what kind of impact are we talking about here? So if your service is down, your impact is about money. That's for sure, right? So you will lose money, all right, revenue, exactly. Thank you, Karen. That's revenue. Customer satisfaction, okay? So that's one perspective, that customer satisfaction, which actually is linked with the revenue also. You may think of this from health perspective. So what about the health? Health of your employees or also the health of the area where you have your factory or the plant? Okay, so from health perspective, that's one. You may also want to look at the process safety. All right, so if the service is down, what will happen to the process safety? All right, for example, leakage of chemical. It may lead towards a fire as well, right? Explosion. So that can also be an issue. That's linked with the process safety. You can also do the assessment based on your stakeholders, because those investors who actually invest money in your organization, they may want their millions or billions out. So if something happens, then maybe they're the one who are like, hey, your organization is not running fine. You don't manage your processes in a good way. So give us our money back. So that could be linked with your stakeholders. Imagine that something happened and news become national or international, then of course your stakeholder will have an impact. They will have some fear, right? Are we good on this perspective? So you, in your organization, like normally when I have about 8 different criteria on which we agree on and we do the classification. So any service, any process is down, the impact from the money perspective, which is about more than $10 million, it could be catastrophic. Again, depending on organization to organization. It actually, it's based on the revenue. If organization revenue is billions, that's what we're talking about. More than 10 million, it could be catastrophic. If the organization revenue is only 1 million, then of course we have to, based on their 5%, 10% of the revenue, we have to put the classification, high, low, medium, and so forth. So based on that one, we'll classify what can be catastrophic. Same goes for the health, for the impact to the stakeholders, and so forth, okay? So the point here is, what is business continuity management or the benefits? So we understand the business continuity is about make sure that if any interruption happens, your services will not be impacted. And the benefit is your business will continue. You carry on with the customers, you don't lose the customers, you carry on with your processes, no damage, and so forth. So major benefit is you are back up in time that you agree with the customer, right? So those slides that you missed, you can also go through in the video later on, right? Once I share that. And that actually covers in the beginning also. Okay, so let's carry on with my further presentation, all right? So we'll try to wrap up in the next half an hour, inshallah. So here I would like to discuss with you on what are the key elements when you start working on the business continuity itself, right? So we are talking about you can implement your business continuity implementation in one phase, two phases, three phases, whatever. When I do it, I did it in two phases. So phase one is where we do the business impact analysis. Of course, documentation is done. And part of the business impact is you try to identify the resource requirements. Then you do the risk assessment, what are the risks we are having in the organization. And the risk where you are going to find out what is the probability of the risk happening, the chances of this happening, and also the impact. Okay, so that you find out, so you can also have your, let's say, 5x5 heat map. How many of you know about the heat map 5x5? That's where we are talking about from the impact perspective: high, low, medium. So you start with very low, low, medium, high, very high, and then also from the probability perspective, right? So you have the impact and the probability. You actually have these five scale, and where they meet. For example, a risk. Let's talk about this in a real case scenario. I want all of you guys to type in any risk that you face in your organization. Please type in any risk that you have identified recently. Any risk. Right? Anyone? Type in any risk. I haven't seen one. Okay, so we have fire safety, infection, no backup for my job if I get unexpectedly sick. Okay, so that's the resource you're talking about. Okay, let's take the resource, right? So we talk about a resource not available, all right? That is a risk. Is this really a risk? Yes, it is, all right? So we talk about the risk of this. Now let's do the assessment. What are the chances of this happening? So we talk about from very low to low, medium, high, very high. Very low means it will never happen. Let's say one day out of 365 days a year. And very high means it's like almost like 99%, almost like every other day, every day. So we have very low, very high, and then you have specific percentage. For example, let's say very low could be chance of this happening is 10%. Normally, by the way, when you do the risk assessment probability, it starts with 10%. It's very low. 30% is low. The 30% chance this can happen. 50% chance is medium. 70% is high. 90% is very high. So that's a scale of your, normally that's a scale of your probability. So let me ask you, what are the chances? And I'm talking to all of you guys, since this risk is applicable to all of you guys. So what are the chances of you not going to office tomorrow, get sick, or for whatever the reason is? Unasked vacation leave, just simply not go because of whatever the condition is. So based on your history, based on the last 6 months, last 1 year, you're telling me the chance of this happening is very low, or 10%. Or if you are the guy, so the chance could be 50%. Like I know one of my colleague, it's 50%. I mean, even now I know that's 50%. There's another colleague I know, it's very low, right? So that's how you can understand. So that's about probability. So that's a 5 scale, right? Then what is the impact if you don't go to office? So the impact is, again, it could be from multiple perspectives, but majorly it's from the money perspective. It could be from the job perspective, the time perspective, like you're working on something and you cannot deliver it. So it could be from multiple cases. Let's talk about from money perspective and impact. And again, if your organization is, let's say revenue is 1 million. So you start with, what's 1% of 1 million? So your very low will be if the impact is less than $10,000, and then maybe 5%, okay, $50,000, and then maybe 10%, which is half, medium, 15%, and 20% is the most. So if you don't go to office tomorrow, and the impact is going to be, let's say, somewhere around $50,000, so that means you're talking about you don't go to office, very low, or low, and then impact is low. Both of them, low and low. This again, you have a grid, a colorful grid. Let me show you the grid, all right? So bear with me. Let me share my screen with you guys. It's from a different document that I have to show you, but let me see if I can find it on this slide. Okay, I think I have it on my different system, all right? So don't have this slide available with me here. So Let me see if I can. Mute yourself. All right, never mind. We lose focus there. So let me show you the grid, right, that I'm talking about, the heat map. Just bear with me. In the meantime, you have any other questions, please let me know. Okay, so there you go. That's the heat map that we're talking about. So let me see if I can share this. Okay, so you can see this slide now. That's basically a heat map we were talking about. Okay, so with this, yeah. Okay, so with this, what you are looking at is an impact, okay, on one side and then probability on the other side. Are we good? You understand that? So with this, what happened is that based on your very low and very low towards the likelihood or probability and very low towards the impact, you fall into green area. All right. And if it'll be high and high, all right, or you fall into the light green, and then we talk about the yellow zone, and then orange, and then red. That's the standard colors that we're talking about. So we talk about this red one is where it's high alert. Management have to take care of actions right away. Everyone needs to be taking some part, right? Do something about it. And when we talk about the orange zone, so you have multiple classification, class 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So class 4 and 5 is where you should be taking care of the risks actively, proactively, right? Any questions on this? Are we good? We understand the heat map? And for some reason, it's moving back and forth. All right. So that's where I was. Are we clear with the risk assessment? We understand that based on the heat map, we know where we are. And then you talk about the continuity strategy, all right? So you understand on based on the business impact analysis, the processes, the critical elements based on the risk. Now we write down for a specific process, the impact could be ABC, all right, to the equipment. And for that equipment, what is my backup? What is the workaround? And then what is my resolution? So you write this down in your continuity strategy. How are you going to respond to the interruption? So if, as you talk about in the beginning, if fire happened and that fire has damaged one of your equipment, okay, which is actually helping us to make the rings, then what are we going to do? Are we going to shift to the manual process? Are we going to work the equipment number 2, all right, or the backup equipment, and so forth? So whatever the instruction happened, how are we going to take care? So that's basically, what you work out on phase 1. Okay, talk about the heat map. Then phase 2 will be when you continue with the plans. All right, so we talk about the business continuity plan. Now, for every process, you have to actually write it down in more detail. So what kind of incident could happen? So you talk about scenarios as well. And then you also talk about your IT disaster recovery plans. You talk about your information technology or operational technology items as well. What do you have in place? And how are you going to recover if an interruption happens? So do you have procedures in place? For the company policy, you prepare one policy for the BC, and then you talk about the procedure for your different processes for specific incidents or interruptions that happen. So you talk about the procedure. Now it's step-by-step procedure for anything that can happen. Of course, it's too much documentation, and actually it's one-time effort. If you do it one time in a good way, then of course for multiple years to come, you just have to practice and make sure your team know how to work on this, and you're good to go, right? Anything will happen, you will take care in a good way. And we talk about exercising and testing. So when you prepare your business continuity management system, when you prepare these responses, then what you need to do is you schedule with your team. Again, your people, your team will be playing the part that you discuss with them that, hey guys, and you bring in those people, you prepare it well, and you talk to them. If now, as we discussed earlier, fire happens, what are you going to do? What's your action? If the equipment has been damaged. Now, another scenario is, for example, while this fire happened, and actually we're talking about afterwards, because while it happened, fire department will take care. But what are the after effects? So business continuity is not about what you will do to the fire, but what you will do to the business processes after the fire happened. So now fire is taken care of because you need to evacuate, right? You cannot do anything about it. But now the fire is gone, everything is okay. Now people will come back in. Now you need to assess what the damage happened. Your process shuts down. How many hours you need to be back up? What was your RTO? So that your other processes will not be impacted. Because remember, you need to give end-to-end business, right? So you need to look at what happened, what damage. Now, what are our recovery or response plans to this fire, right? What happened? So you pull up those procedures, and all the people responsible for that process or other processes, they actually have to execute the response plan that you agreed on. So you need to do the exercising and testing to make sure that our recovery response is correct, and they are doable, and they are achievable, and they are realistic. So that's basically what you need to practice with people. Now, where you can do the practice, you do the real drill. Where you cannot do the real drill, that's where you actually have to work with the team. So you have to do simulations. And if you cannot even do simulations, at least you have to do the tabletop. So that is where you have to bring in people, you have to talk to them and walk through the scenarios. That if this happened, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? Okay, so these are your 6 actually key stages where you need to implement your business continuity. You have different type of plans. You have emergency response plan, where you need to build the scenarios for specific, scenarios so you can take care, right? So for example, if a cyber attack will happen, what are you going to do, and so forth. So we talk about the emergency response plan. You also need to write down or make sure that what kind of warnings are there, what kind of alerts are there, and how are you going to communicate, and so forth, right? How are we going to detect those? So we need to understand that overall, this is the idea, right? We have crisis management plan, called CMP, which brings all together a leadership team to respond. Because if the crisis, that means not just the process owners or the subject matter expert are going to be involved, it's going to involve the higher management, the top management, right? You need to make sure that your plans are there. The crisis management, everyone is well aware of those plans. Everyone knows their role and responsibility. A lot of time that we have seen that just to become ISO certified, you prepare the plans, but it's not implemented. It's not even communicated well with the team. So sometimes we get to know the top management. Oh, I'm there. Oh, I'm supposed to do something. So that's where you actually have to do. My personal exercise, or the way to do it, is to do the walkthrough exercise, where you prepare the crisis management plan. Those people who have role responsibility, you need to actually do and walk through with them. Exactly tell them this is what it is. That's your action. That's what you need to do. And get the sign off from all those guys who are part of it. So no one would say at the end that, oh, I don't know this, or I didn't know this exists. Okay, key point. Do you want to understand one of the key elements in business continuity implementation? Or shall I say effective business continuity implementation? Do you want to know this? Come on, guys, tell me. You want to know this key tip and trick, the key element which will help you to make sure that your business continuity is implemented effectively. And not just for 1 year, multiple years. So Mr. Usman said yes, Atif said yes, please. Okay, where are everyone else? Come on, let me see your yes. Okay, Karen said yes, Shahid said yes. Okay, so let me share this with you. Every year, make sure that you do a review of these documents with the key stakeholders. So if you have 10 people who have signed the crisis management plan because their role is there, we're talking about your president, vice president, directors, and so forth. Make sure that next year, after completing the year, do another walkthrough. It could be only 2 to 4 hours, but make sure you do a walkthrough for your plans. Even if you don't have any change in your crisis management plan or your other emergency plan and so forth, at least do this meeting, do a walkthrough with everyone, get signature again, get them sign again on the document for this new year, all right? That way they cannot say that, oh, they don't know this. That way they will actually be reminded about the plan, and they actually know that they have a role to play if some crisis happen. Make sense? Are we clear? So make sure that the team is involved, the key stakeholders are involved with the signature. When they sign, they know they have taken up responsibility and they will be serious about it. Otherwise, sometimes they're in the meeting and they're just, on their mobile doing, just their own chat and stuff. And they're like, yeah, we know this. Okay, yeah, we know this, right? At the end, they're saying, oh, good job. But then they don't do what they need to do when the crisis happens. Make sure that they're part of it, all right? Okay, so we have crisis plan, then we talk about the business continuity plans, all right? They aim to recover your critical business processes following a significant disruption. So make sure your plans are complete, because what happened is it's a lot of effort from your side to prepare those and from the process owners, because they need to give a lot of information. Now, I face a challenge, and that challenge is invalidating the information. So when I get, for example, we need 30 resources for this process if a disruption happened, and normally we have like 60 people or 100 people. When I go back to validate, that's where the issue is. The information I get the first hand from the process expert, where they say we need 30 people. No, actually they need only 7 people or 8 people to minimum start the process with the minimum service. So you have to make sure that you get the validation from key stakeholders, all right, from the champions. Here we are talking about. So they are the one who should be validating. They are the managers of your process owners. Okay, so validation is the key for all these plans. Make sure the information is correct and accurate. It may change over time, by the way. So this year you have, let's say you identified 50 processes. Out of 50, 20 of them are critical. So you start doing the BIA, start preparing the documents for those 20. But next year, you may also have another 5 processes become critical. Or maybe out of those 20, 2 become non-critical. Or you may have removed one process because of the automation or due to your operational excellence projects. One of the Lean Six Sigma project, you identify that X process is a waste, so you remove it. It could happen. So every year, make sure that you go and revise. Once you become mature, you can move the frequency to be every 2 years and so forth. And then, of course, you have to have your IT disaster recovery plans. So here, when we talk about the technology and communication systems, mostly the more complex they are, more attention they require. You may also have the business continuity separately to be done on your IT systems. Some organizations do that, okay? And they have the IT disaster recovery plan, which is a major part of it. So you may have a BCMS only for the IT, and then you have the other one for the business. Again, depending on your organization, how big you are, and is this applicable, then you do so. You may have 2 different teams implementing them, but the key here is to make sure they align together. They're all aligned on the framework, all right? So the documentation, the template, the information is almost same. Otherwise, when you go and look in these 2 documents, you'll be lost that what these guys are doing and what these guys are doing. So where is the RTO in this document and where is the RTO mentioned in this document? So make sure the alignment is there. All right, so that's basically what we were talking about. These are the key elements of the business continuity. So I want to make sure, do we understand the business continuity in a good way? So from day we started until now when we complete our webinar, so do you see the value there? So if you see the value, please type in value. Before you join the session and once we complete this, and we're almost complete. So do we understand the value? Do we understand more about the business continuity? And by the way, those who missed, will share the video with you so you can go through the video and you can understand, you can go through this again, right? There's a lot of terminology, all right, a lot of information. So what you need to do is, of course, review this, understand this. There is an ISO 22301 standard. Okay, so how many of you you understand the standard? You understand the ISO? How many of you have gone through the ISO 9001 or any of those ISO standards? So have you seen any ISO standard? Type in yes. Have you seen any ISO standard? Type in yes. Karen said yes. Adit said yes. Okay, ISO 9001, very good. So normally, and those who have not seen it, I highly recommend that go and do a search, and you can actually buy the ISO standards. It's worth the investment, all right? So you have ISO 9001, you have ISO 22301, there's ISO 50001 for energy management. There are many ISO standards, okay? So for the business continuity is the 22301. I'm lead implementer, and of course we conduct the lead implementer training as well. It's coming up in August. But you can also become ISO 9001 quality management system, which is what Atif mentioned. So a good combination of two. If you want to implement ISO in your organization, you should do the lead auditor for ISO 9001, which is quality management system, which the more focus is on the whole quality management system. What kind of processes do we have? What is the business we do? What kind of documentation do we have? All right. So the whole comprehensive one is the ISO 9001. You should do the ISO 9001 lead auditor and become certified as lead implementer in 22301. There's a lead auditor for 22301 as well. Again, if you feel the value, you should do that as well. But if you have an LA lead auditor 9001, very good. Lead implementer in 22301, very good. The same goes for the other standards as well. You can become lead auditor or lead implementer. There are a couple of other certificates as well, but these are the major one. Considering you have to spend a lot of time, and of course there's an investment involved. So don't do everything, but do what is more important and relevant. Okay, and by the way, I implement business continuity as well. So if you have any questions, any concerns, you can talk to me freely, reach me out. I'll share my WhatsApp number as well here, all right? So just send me WhatsApp message and we can carry on our discussion further, all right? So it's, Usman will share that information with you, all right? So contact us if you have any questions, any concerns. Also, we'll share with you the Trustpilot. So based on the 2 hours value that you have achieved from here, please put up your comment in Trustpilot mentioning about the business continuity session. And of course, any good word. And I'm expecting 5 stars from you. All right, thank you. I wasn't sure I want to listen to this webinar, but I'm glad I did. Many of these topics can also apply to personal life. Exactly, yes. I need to create an evacuation plan for me in case of emergency. You did. Thank you very much. And I appreciate that you and of course other colleagues are here attending. Furthermore, on the career development and furthermore towards your own personal growth. All right. So there are 2 things. Normally, when you talk about the career development and for the business itself, once you know in more detail what these documents are, what these elements are, your organization can become certified. Now, the purpose of making your organization certified is the two purposes, right? So one is, of course, right away the marketing. Your customers, your clients, or your suppliers will have more confidence in you that you have good business continuity practices in place. So revenue generation, you increase your revenue. This is number 1. The second is that you make sure that those processes are there. So not only just for marketing and to gain more business, but also to mature your process. So 2 purposes why you want to implement business continuity in your organization. Now you may do it and not get ISO certificate, that's fine, but do it for the process growth. Do it for your maturity of the processes. What I say is, since you're going to implement it in a way that you become certified as well. It's a less cost, but also the reward is bigger. If you gain one client, and we're talking about, let's say one client is bringing you, $50,000, $30,000. So if one client brings you $30,000, perfect, all right? You gain two clients, your cost of business continuity implementation will be covered easily, okay? By the way, just want to let you guys know of our future plan, and I will also take up your questions if you have any. So we do a continuity management system, which is the ISO 9001, and we also do business continuity 22301. So we do both certificates. They're coming up. They're coming up in August. So if you want to become ISO 9001 certified, again, certification is not must. Okay, there's a fee for certificate. And if you don't want to take a certificate, you can just attend a training for the knowledge to mature yourself. In both cases, for ISO 9001 and also for ISO 22301, business continuity. So the training is going to be for ISO 9001 from 7 to 12th of August. It's going to be 2 hours. Most likely we'll be sharing about 1 hour lecture video. So we send you the video and then 2 hour live session where you do the exercise and the workshop. So what we did today, we did not do any exercise or workshop. We did not go through the scenarios. But here in these detailed workshops, we go through scenarios as well. For example, we agree on a process. We agree that you are the process owner. And we say that, okay, your role is, let's say you're the fire manager, right? You're the fire chief. And if the fire is outburst there, or you are the IT manager and the cyber attack happened. So we agree on something and we need to look at the scenarios. We do the case studies. That's how you learn a lot in these. And I think 50% of your implementation will be taken care of through these training and the knowledge that we share here. If you want to implement any of those, that's a big help, right? So if you are looking at implementation, 2 people, 3 people from your organization can join. That's preparing you for implementation as well. And of course, personal and professional growth is there. You can type in. So what I will do is I will send you the link here as well. And actually will send you an email. So those who want certificate, please send a message to Usman, all right? Make sure that he knows, or send a message to me so we can share a certificate with you. Okay, this is attendance certificate for business continuity, 2 hours. And of course, we'll share more details as well. Special today and right now is, if you want to register, the regular fee for the ISO certification is $892. That's with the certificate, all right? $892. And if you register now, if you sign up today now, you will get it for $698. So you get about $200 discount. Okay, something around $190, something like this. Okay, so this is for ISO 9001. If you want to have combo, let us know so we can combine you. And I have team who are actually going for combo, right? So which is the best, by the way? So you get the ISO lead auditor and then you get your business continuity lead implementer. So that's best approach that I would recommend because I've done for myself. So I recommend that to you as well. And then we have the business continuity from 22 to 28. It'll be longer hours. So it's going to be mostly, again, live session from 6 to 10. It's 4 hours live. Again, we may combine that with the recorded session as well, right? So the live time will be less for you. So you can give only 2 hours in live session and about 1 hour on the exercise and the recorded session, right? So that's, again, we'll try to build up. Business continuity is actually more advanced certificate, more valuable. And of course, it's a little bit expensive as well, right? So the regular fee is $1,333. Today, with special discount, you get it for $1,133. Okay, how you can do it now? Simply go, and I will put in the chat your link. So you can go there and you can, I believe this is what I have. You can type in there. So I will share with you the link where you can go and you can register, right? Okay, so or Usman will share the link. So you can look at the link here and you can type in, that's our Eventbrite link. So you can go and you can register there. Plus, you can complete your registration by paying. All right, so you can complete the payment. And that will register you for the course, right? So you can complete your registration today as well. Just to confirm, just to concern. So where are you from, everyone? Please type in which country are you from. So here is a link to register for the business continuity for August. So type in your country, please. Karen from United States. Tahid from Pakistan. Bella from KSA, Saudi Arabia. Muhammad from Saudi Arabia. Math from Jordan, mashallah. All right, very good. So we have different people from different areas. All right, that's the beauty of online session. So everyone, once we share the link with you, okay, you will have the video, you will have presentation slides as well. All right, so you can share that with your colleagues. All right, if they want to go through, and let us know. So this is the link to register. Register today to avail your discount and the benefits. If you feel the value in this session, for sure you're going to feel a lot of value in the live. And the way what happened in our live session or in our certification session is you go through the standard. By the way, if you get the standard and you read it, it's very boring. All right, that happened to me. So I'm telling you from my personal experience and from some of my students as well and colleagues. So normally you don't want to read this standard. And by the way, 50% or more than 50%, you'll not be able to understand, because it's about what are they saying. So you need to read between the lines, what the meaning of a clause, what are they saying, what are they asking, what are they demanding, what are the requirements. To understand the requirement for any standard is the key. Once you know the requirement, you start fulfilling them one by one, which is what I've shown you in my slides. So that's once you implement those documents, all right, through those documents and through those processes, procedures and so forth, you actually try to complete all the requirements of any standard, which means you're going to mature your process and you're going to get your or gain your certification. So if you are looking into becoming certified, if you're looking to become making your organization certified, implement these standards, let me know, right? And we can carry on from there. So you can reach me either ways. You can look into the description as well, and we'll carry on from there. Any questions? We'll stop the recording now, all right? And again, for those viewers who watched through the video, contact us through the description. Information is there.